So coming from Prague, he's a staff engineer at Very Street Software, known for crafting iOS apps used by millions. His focus includes enhancing developer productivity, modularizing codebase with Swift package, and pioneering work with Swift UI and server-side Swift. Let's welcome Petr Pavlik.
Thank you. I think I can hear myself. Good morning, everyone. I would like to talk about Swift packages. And before that, let me quickly introduce myself. Laura kind of covered it, but my name is Petr. I've been working with iOS since iOS 4. And as already mentioned, I am staff engineer at a company called Very Street Software. We built social/dating apps for the LGBTQ plus community, and we serve north of 30 million users. And I would like to take you back roughly 3 years ago at this point, what our code base looked like back then. Back in 2020 or even 2019, the code base was already 10 plus years old. We were busy rewriting the standard Objective-C massive view controller kind of architecture, using clean architecture to make everything testable, mockable, be able to split it into modules, that kind of stuff. And back then we were like 50% Objective-C, 50% Swift. Almost all the code was inside the main app project bundle back then. And our team was actually quickly expanding, especially as COVID started and the company went like fully remote and started hiring more people. So what started happening is that we really started struggling with long compile times, especially as you're like mixing Objective-C and Swift, and you take a bunch of Objective-C code, you bridge it into Swift, and then you take that Swift and bridge it back into Objective-C. You basically blow all the caching efforts, that XC build may be trying to do. And the more we were the more stuff we would migrate to Swift, the longer would compile times go. And we would also get really into unit testing. So we would start unit testing everything. We would start unit testing our view models and everything beneath that. But it was not the best user experience, because imagine you're trying to debug a failing unit test and it takes like 30 seconds, for the unit test to run or even more. It was actually pretty frustrating. We also are very early adopters, I would dare to say, of Swift UI, but trying to run those Swift UI previews when you have like the main app bundle with things that are swizzling a bunch of stuff like Firebase included, it just wouldn't work. And on top of that, we would start being really encouraged to do remote pairing, basically, pair remotely or using some screen sharing app. And you can imagine that if just building the app itself on your machine would take forever. Imagine trying to do that while screen sharing, like, 4K, your 4K desktop and camera, and try to be in a hot country like Latin America on top of that. Those, MacBooks would be melting. So how do we improve developer experience? Well, looking at it like 3 years down the line, the history has shown that just get everyone those Era MacBooks and like that pretty much like solves everything. But we also try to modularize our code base. And we were looking into, okay, what our options were back then. I mean, the standard thing would be just use those, Xtheme frameworks and put stuff in there. But I always hated that basically generates a bunch of files no one understands, and if you want to merge two files, two like frameworks into one and vice versa, it would be a pain. Then there was this option of CocoaPods. CocoaPods, what is CocoaPods? CocoaPods is basically this abstraction on top of Xc frameworks. It generates these Xc frameworks libraries for you. And I would see people using basically local CocoaPods to modularize their code base. That was an option. Then there were options like Buck, Bazel, Twist. I did not really feel like using a third-party built solution. I thought it would be too much of an overhead, and Apple itself should like provide us good enough tooling to be able to build reasonable tools. But so is this cool? One of the authors is with us in this very room. We had a brief conversation this morning. I really want to, try it out. I really want to take a look at what's new there. And then there was Swift Package Manager, which was actually very new back then. But I really like the idea that you just have like one file that, package.swift, you put whatever, you define whatever you want in there, and then you can be easily moving things around. So we tried to use that. But back then, Swift packages were like really, really new. I thought they were like barely integrated into Xcode. And for instance, sounds kind of ridiculous now, but they would not support things like resources. You couldn't add any resources like localized strings or images into that. And there were bugs and bugs with static versus dynamic linking, all that hell. But we decided to become basically early adopters and go for it anyway because we knew that it would take years to fully modularize our code base anyway. So we just took a leap of faith. We were confident enough that Apple would not announce, over the next WWDC, hey, sorry, we're deprecating Swift packages, with something else. So we were just like, okay, Apple is just gonna keep adding things and fixing things, which they fortunately would. So we would basically start with things that could be done back then. Let's start splitting out the model layer of your app and maybe the logic layer, because you don't really need resources for that, maybe for tests, but like JSONs, but we would just hardcode them into our unit test files. One of the biggest, most questionable things is that we would need to move our third-party resources from using CocoaPods that just work, let's face it. I mean, it just works. It's been around. It's fine. It's stable. We would need to move everything to Swift packages. I mean, like third-party developers and SDKs vendors would start adding support for Swift packages back then, but yeah, it was not anywhere as stable as CocoaPods. And we would use React. We would have React Native integrated in the app to use few things. And React Native is using CocoaPods under the hood, so we would have things such as we would use SD web image in the app, and we would also use SD web image indirectly in React Native because some of the node packages would just internally use it. And if we try to rip it out and migrate it into a Swift package, the SD web image itself would support it, but the app wouldn't compile. It would start yelling that there's like duplicated symbols during linking, so stuff like that. And for me, one of the most frustrating things was that I would be a big proponent of taking all your pods or dependencies, like the physical code, and checking it with your repo. So then when you like clone it, you just build it and it works. That's not really an option with Swift packages. And yeah, bugs. Just getting back to those that pod file cannot be checked in. Yeah, I mean, I know that it's like standard with things like NPM, but still there's things that are not problem until it's a problem, like when some developer of an open source tool has a bad day and decides to take their project off GitHub, so there's more people having a bad day. If you don't have it cached in here, suddenly the app won't compile. Bugs. One story, or like the worst thing that happened that I can think of is that we would be working on video chat. And we would use this third-party tool to basically take care of like the video chat infrastructure for us. And they would support Swift packages, but their SDK was distributed as a binary Swift package. You would not get the code, you would get the built binary. And Swift would or like Swift Package Manager would support that, but and it worked, and we were like excited about modularizing our code base, and so we decided to create a feature package, put everything in there, and everything worked until we submitted it to test flight for the first time, and we would get back an error that the framework could not be found. There was a bug in Swift package where it would like throw away binary packages or something like that, and we only figure out after we basically submitted first beta to test flight. So that's the first. I mean, so we kind of just moved it back to the main app bundle for the time. It's been fixed by now. So that's kind of the worst thing that happened in the end, which was not that bad. Or maybe there was something so bad that I just erased it from my memory, but this is the worst thing that I can remember. Christmas is coming, so I have quite a few feature requests I would like to see Swift packages to support. One of them, I want those pods back. I really do. I want the physical code of packages checked with the code base. Another thing I would really like to see is that in Xcode we have that left gutter where we have all those Swift packages. And if I want to I find a bug or something and I want to fix a third-party package, I want to just right-click on it, and I want some option saying something like, turn this into a local package that gets moved into a repo that doesn't exist. You can actually use Xcode. If you want to use Visual Studio Code, I will touch a bit on that later. There's this plugin. It actually works quite well. You can develop Swift using Visual Studio Code. And that actually has that feature. I tried it. I tried to click on it, and it errored out, so it doesn't work even there. Another thing, every reasonable package solution has a command to check what packages are outdated, especially if there's a new major version, that you may consider. Swift doesn't have it. I don't know why. Pod has pod outdated, npm has npm outdated. In Swift, there isn't one. But someone created this very thing as a third-party tool. So you can get it. It generally works well, but there is not support for iOS or Apple platform-related frameworks, such as SwiftUI has this thing called preview assets, where you can put a bunch of files you want to render in your SwiftUI previews, but you don't actually want to ship it with your app. That doesn't work with Swift packages. StoreKit doesn't work. StoreKit 2 has that mocking framework. You cannot use it. I checked with Apple engineers. You need to have access to the app bundle to be able to run those StoreKit mocks. So we were recently migrating to StoreKit 2, and I really thought I'd be able to use those mocks, but no, we had to do the other way and create protocols, interfaces, and mock versions for the StoreKit 2 APIs. And you cannot really profile Swift package executable if you're doing, let's say, some a console app or server-side Swift app. You cannot profile it using instruments or something like that. You need to wrap it in a Mac app, and then it works. Implicit transitive dependencies. Yeah, you cannot really hide some packages that are inside of another package. I don't know, if you have Mixpanel and you have it in some abstraction that you have there's currently no way to prevent people from accessing that Mixpanel. There is a very good blog post that I would direct you if you want to know more. And last but not least, when you're running unit tests using Xcode, regular targets, you can choose to run your unit tests in a random order. You cannot do it using Swift packages running that Swift test, as far as I know. I did the dash help. I checked all the commands. It's not there. But I think it's still worth it. There's a lot of beautiful stuff. I mean, if you compare it to those XC frameworks, Swift package is one file that's written in Swift itself. If it was YAML, I think that'd be fine as well, but it's what it is. You can easily configure whatever you want in there. You can easily move things around, split two packages, put them together, move targets around. You can just drag and drop files to a different package. It all works. One thing I really loved that was really I hated when we had everything inside of basically Xcode projects was that when you add a new file, those files would not be sorted in alphabetical orders when I'm looking for something. It's just or you would always need to right-click and do sort. This does it automatically. We use a lot of local packages. Our repo is basically a monorepo, so it's basically all packages are local packages. As I already mentioned, we are, I would say, quite early adopters of SwiftUI. A lot of the app is SwiftUI now. And SwiftUI previews work actually in Swift packages. When you have very isolated Swift packages, those previews are fast. They are usable. Another thing we're doing is that a lot of things that are not UI related, like all the logic layers and that kind of stuff, are in packages that are actually compilable on a Mac. So we can easily, like, just when you run a unit test, you basically, it doesn't touch the simulator. You just compile it on a Mac and you run it. From what I've tried, you can try to use like that Mac catalyst, and that like works quite fast as well. But we just maintain that most of our packages that are not really touching UI or anything very specific can be compiled on a Mac. When it comes to like structuring your packages, there's like these two schools. One of them is you can actually have one package where you have multiple targets. So if you have an app that has multiple modules, it can all be one big Swift.package file. I will show you. I don't know if the video is gonna play, but this is supposed to be a video. Oh yeah, something's moving. So you can see this is one file. This is a sample code from those 0.3 guys, and they were basically showing an example of creating it's some like game or something like that that's hyper modularized. They have like 50 packages or something like that, and they have one package, that Swift file, and they have everything in there. The benefit is that if you want to update the version of your Swift, which Swift you're using, you just have one place where to update it. All your dependencies are one place. That's the benefit of doing that. Option number 2 is, okay, when I press, okay. Another example would be to have multiple packages with files that you can have, which kind of makes more sense if you have, this is a Vapor, that's a server-side Swift framework you can take a look at if you want to. And it's a pretty complex thing, but you can see that the whole package.swift file is only like not even 200 files, or not 200 lines or whatever, because it's all in separate repos and separate packages, and it's kind of, so then the pain of that is when new Swift is released, like Swift.19 was released recently, you need to go to all those package.swift files and in every file go like, put on top of the file, okay, now use Swift 5.9. If you're using something like Quick and Nimble for unit testing and you want to update to a major version, you need to go to all those files and update it there, which is not that painful, but it's something to consider. I have some few useful tips, hopefully for you. One is, how do you check if you have some outdated packages? You can use this tool called Swift Outdated. It's on GitHub. You can install it as like pre-built using using Homebrew, and then you basically just go to the root folder of your Swift package and you type in Swift Outdated. And like any other reasonable tool, really, I hope that Apple should like add this natively to Swift. It shows this table, okay, these packages can be updated, and these packages are, if you update packages, these are not going to be updated because there's a new major version and you need to like, update to it manually. You may want to run Swiftlint, that was already mentioned today, which would not be possible. But since I believe last year, Swift packages have this thing called Swift package plugins that basically allow you to inject things into like build phases when building individual packages. Swiftlint supports that. You can add Swiftlint as a dependency or as a step when you're building your packages, and it's going to show all those warnings and errors you would expect, which is really great. And I would really like to give kudos to the maintainers of Swiftlint, because the way these Swift packages work is that they run in this insane sandbox, and they really had to tweak the Swiftlint binary to be able to work within this sandbox. So appreciate that. What if you hate Xcode? You can use Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code has plugins. There is a plugin for Swift, And that plugin, actually, I was like playing with it recently, and it's actually pretty good. I was surprised how good it is. You can do like everything that you may need. You can be debugging. The debugger works. You have breakpoints. You know, Swift packages work. Um, there's, I mean, it kind of, I mean, using Visual Studio Code kind of makes you a bit appreciate Xcode a bit better. It's not as bad as we tend to claim. It actually just works pretty well. So when you come like Xcode versus using Visual Studio Code with this plugin, I would say some things are better, some things are worse. With Visual Studio Code, you can get that Copilot, which is pretty cool. And I want the machines to work for me because I'm lazy. So you can set up automatic update of your dependencies. That once a week or something like that just creates a pull request saying, hey, these packages are updated. You can set it up that it's like aligned with your release cycle. If you're releasing every 2 weeks at the beginning of every release cycle, you can have a scheduled job in GitHub action that says, you know, time to update packages. So you just update them. This is what it looks like. This is the repository that you can use to make this work. And yeah, to sum things up, we took this leap of faith and kind of started modularizing our code base using Swift packages. It did take several years as expected. Apple pretty much did fix most of their stuff as we would hope for. With Xcode 14, I would say that the integration was like really good. With Xcode 15, it's still good and it crashes less, so that's good. But I still kind of wish that Apple would listen to user feedback and kind of edit things that are standard, you know, for when it comes to like NPM or even port things that were nice when using Cocoa pods, like, you know, that's /pods. And putting effort into modularizing your code base will really help developer productivity when we're working, especially in some like logic layers. You do like command U and it takes like, I don't know, literally like 1 second or 2 seconds to like build it again and run the unit tests, and everything works great. So the obviously like moving everyone to M1 Max was and did a lot of heavy lifting, but this like really increased our productivity a lot as well, especially as I said when we were like chasing some failing unit tests and that kind of stuff. And I believe that's it for my talk. So thank you, and any questions? I will say that when I saw the first presentation, I freaked out that I was supposed to include this to my slides, but it's like a separate thing.
Okay, so I have one question. It says, are you still building the entire app when developing? Or do you have something like demo apps or focus mode to let developers only build a subset of the project?
So what we do is that you open the entire project. It's opening still reasonably fast, so that wasn't a problem. And what you do is that if you want to work on some specific feature or something like that, you go to the scheme selector. I don't know who to ask that question, so I don't know where to be looking in the audience. Yeah, you use that scheme selector and basically switch to the target that you want to use, and you're just compiling the target, which is a huge time saver.
Okay, great. Any other question? I have one. It says, how you migrated all your dependencies to SPM?
Well, definitely now, but even back in 2020, most dependencies would actually add support for Swift packages. So that was actually not a problem. The only constraint for like the first year was that those resources, but that's fine now. So yeah, gradually migrating from Cocoa pods to Swift packages. It was a painful process, but we managed.
Okay. The last one, Do you recommend using SPM and CocoaPods at the same time?
You can, but the issue is that if you have a Swift package, you cannot really import a CocoaPods dependency into that Swift package. Maybe through some like hackery, but generally you cannot. Which was the main reason why we like migrated basically all our dependencies. We didn't have that many, fortunately. There's companies that have way more. So yes, we still do have some dependencies using CocoaPods. For instance, I believe that we still have like Swiftlin integrated through CocoaPods, that kind of stuff. But yeah, besides that, almost exclusively Swift packages.
Okay, so I think that's it.
All right.
Thank you so much,
Thank you, everyone.
Peter.